What is a name? A bunch of random sounds formed into a sensory association of our personhood to the ones closest to us? A means of identifying our conscious connection to the bag of meat and bones we inhabit, along with the world we are thrown into and have to adapt every day to survive? Ancient sounds and phonetic devices kept alive through our collective indomitable spirit and yearning for answers? And wouldn't you know it, some people have the exact same names. The study of the history of names is onomastics, and I'm not one of them, but it's about damn time somebody spoke up and said something about these absolute freaks, and then made a video and edit a slideshow about it as well. Number 9, Jack Black. Now, I know what you're thinking. Surely you mean the son of two satellite engineers born in California, well known for his YouTube streaming channel, Tenacious D, and his titular role in movies. I mean, the famous Canadian born hobo, burglar, and author Jack Black, born in 1871 in British Columbia but raised in Missouri. He spent 30 years as a prodigious stick up man, home burglar, petty thief, and opium addict. After his last spell in prison, after a total of 15 years of prison time, he wrote his famous autobiography, You Can't Win, with the help of Rose Wilder Lynn, Laura's daughter, describing his career as a traveling criminal, but also urging criminals to go straight while calling for prison reform to combat the futility of prisons and the criminal justice system. His actual name is uncertain, and some sources have it as John or Harry Klein, but in a 1912 newspaper they name him as Thomas Callahan, much like the other Jack Black whose first name is Thomas. Due to this technicality, though, I offer a third Jack Black, the famous Victorian era rat catcher, ferret collector, and mole destroyer. So renowned in England, he was known as Queen Victoria's personal rat catcher. As a young boy in the 19th century streets of London, he would collect feral rats and entertain onlookers with rat tricks, in which they would run up his arms and crawl down his shirt. He also supplied rats to pubs for rat baiting contests and old sport where they would place bets on the number of rats a dog could kill. He was also said to sport a self made uniform of a green topcoat, scarlet waistcoat, with a large leather sash with cast iron rats sewn into it. He was interested in far more than just rat massacres, as he would also breed them, especially unusually colored rats, leading to more rat domestication, as sophisticated ladies of the court would hold their rats in fancy cages, leading to the rat fancy exhibitions many years later, starting in 1901, and the National Fancy Rat Society, founded in 1976, which still exists to this day. Number 8, George Clinton. George Clinton, the famous member of parliament born in 1686 in Lincolnshire, he served the Royal Navy from 1708 to 1761. God damn, that's a long time. And was governor of the province of New York during the French attack of Saratoga during the King George's War in 1745. Side note, in the War of Jenkins' Ear, a war that preceded King George's War, the inciting incident was a Spanish commander slicing off a British merchant captain, Robert Jenkins' ear off, and telling him to take it back to his king. I mean, how fucking metal is that? Clinton was a distant relative of Charles Clinton, an Irish-born soldier and politician who moved to New York and was and fought in the French and Indian War as a colonel, would then become the father of a major general of the Revolutionary War, James Clinton, and the fourth vice president of the United States, George Clinton. Hey, fucking goddamn, wait a second. The second George Clinton, born in 1739, served as the first governor of the state of New York in 1977 and served as vice president under two different presidents, Thomas Jefferson and James Madison. He died in 1812, becoming the first vice president to die in office, and the only other one being James Sherman, dying in office in 1912. And if you notice a pattern here, you'll see that they both died 100 years apart. However, I did my research and I found that the pattern broke when Joe Biden stayed alive throughout the entirety of 2012. He would also have a short appearance in Baby Sweet and Fabo's Geeked Up album.
Ow! My pockets stay full, yours stay empty. Ow!
Hey, wait a second. George Clinton, the famous member of parliament, born in 1941 in North Carolina, moved to New Jersey as a kid and in his teenage years formed a doo-wop group called the Parliaments while working as a barber and songwriter for Motown. His group would change their names to Parliament and Funkadelic and would become one of the greatest funk groups of all time and one of the most sampled artists of all time. They actually might be the most sampled artist of all time. Uh, some famous members are singer and guitarist Bootsy Collins, keyboardist Bernie Worrell, Maggot Brain guitarist Eddie Hazel, tromboner Fred Wesley, talkbox innovator Roger Troutman, who made Computer Love, singer Ray Davis, Fuzzy Haskins, Calvin Simon, and many, many, many others. He said he toured with over 60 members, and the Parliament Band had the same members as Funkadelic and Bootsy's Rubber Band and music under George Clinton's name as well. But they had record deals for all of them under different labels. Talk about fucking innovative genius right there. In his 1993 album, Sample Some of Disc, Sample Some of Dat, becoming a major early inspiration to the birth of rap and later influenced the G-Funk era with Dr. Dre, Snoop, Tupac, as well as Outkast, Ice Cube, Redman, and the Wu-Tang Clan. Ever heard of any of those guys? The amount of people he's worked with is insane beyond the scope of just rap, like James Brown, Prince, Fred Durst, Sly Stone, and I assume the family too. Carlos Santana, gospel artist Kim Burrell, Goody Mob, who I've seen in concert and it was fantastic, Kendrick Lamar, and of course, producing the world famous Red Hot Chili Peppers album Freaky Styley. It's really insane to look back and see someone who growing up was inspired by Little Richard, the Beatles, Frankie Lyman, would then go on Drink Champs at 81 years old and be sharp as a tack and forever be an innovative creative who paved not only black music but black history as a whole. Number 7, Engelbert Humperdinck. Not just a weird German name, but also a weird German fella born in Siegerd, Deutschland in 1854. His real name is Engelbert Humperdinck. Engelbert Humperdinck. And he started piano composition at 7 years old, despite his parents wanting him to pursue architecture. He studied in Naples, Barcelona, Frankfurt, Munich, and Berlin, where he composed several works for a small orchestra. But he got his big break in 1890 when he composed 16 piano accompaniments and dialogue for the Grimm brothers' adaptation of Hansel und Gretel, along with his sister Adelheid Wette, who wrote the libretto and helped with thematic suggestions. It was a smashing hit all around, and it would christen the rest of his career, which consisted of 7 other stage works, and he is the first composer to use Sprechgesang, a vocal technique between singing and speaking, in his 1897 melodrama Königskinder, which means the king's children. In 1921, he attended the German opera Die Freischütz, which was his son Wolfram's first stage director, and he had back to back heart attacks and died the next day. Womp womp. However, he got an asteroid belt, the 99313 Humperdinck, named after him in 1977. Also named after him, Arnold George Dorsey, a British pop singer born in 1936 in Madras, British India, now Chennai, India. One of 10 children who ended up moving back to Leicester at 10. He spent his childhood learning saxophone and he began singing in his late teens and nightclubs. After being spotted in talent contests in the Isle of Man, he released many unsuccessful singles and then spent 9 months in the hospital after being stricken with tuberculosis. After recovering and teaming up with former roommate Gordon Mills, who suggested a name change, he took up the name Engelbert Humperdinck, where his career started to take off in Belgium. He then visited Germany to collab with, and I'm not even making this up, Bert Kaempfert, before going back to Britain to work on his LP. His iteration of the song Release Me, which featured Jimmy Page as a session musician, became very popular, even keeping the Beatles' Strawberry Fields from the top spot. Ever heard of him? On the UK charts, and went on to spend 56 weeks in the top 50 charts. He ended the 60s with the Engelbert Humperdinck Show, a musical variety program that had all the most popular artists of the time, like Ray Charles, Tony Bennett, Shirley Bassey, Diane Warwick, Liberace, all the great ones. He would spend the 70s and 80s touring and selling albums and even having Broadway shows. And he was awarded with the Hollywood Walk of Fame star in 1989 and also appeared on the 1996 film Beavis and Butthead Do America soundtrack with the song Lesbian Seagull. Humperdinck would also perform the Star Spangled Banner at the 1996 Daytona 500, which would go on to be won by Dale Jarrett in that awesome Interstate Batteries car. Damon Albarn asked Humperdinck to collab on Plastic Beach, but his management declined the offer without Humperdinck's knowledge, with him calling it the most grievous sin ever committed. He is also the oldest singer to ever participate in the Eurovision Song Contest when in 2012 in Baku, Azerbaijan, at the age of 76, he performed Love Will Set You Free. However, he finished 25th out of 26th place. And also, to take the cake, he lost the oldest singer record the same night when Natalia Pugacheva, who was born 8 months before him, took the crown. Natalia was a part of Buranovskaya Babushki, the Bodanova Grannies, a Russian choral group who placed second in the competition with 259 points with their hit song Party for Everyone. Number 6, Rose Leslie. Rose Eleanor Arbuthnot Leslie is a Scottish actress well known for her role of Ygritte in Game of Thrones, as well as Gwen Dawson in Downton Abbey, and Mia Rindell from The Good Fight. Born in Aberdeen in 1987, she was raised at Lickley Head Castle, a 15th century castle which ties to her family in the 12th century. Speaking of family, your mom likes to Lickley the head of my castle for 12 centuries. Anywho, her great great grandfather, Don Guillermo de Landa y Escandon, the governor of Mexico City, who has an extremely drawable face, purchased the castle in 1922 when his daughter would marry a Leslie. She has many famous ancestors and relatives and went on to many prestigious schools in France and the UK and won a BASSC certificate in stage combat among her accomplishments. She got her acting career started in plays and small films, but she got her break in 2010 with Downton Abbey, portraying a housemaid, Gwen Dawson. In 2012, she was cast for seasons 2, 3, and 4 of Game of Thrones as Ygritte. Full disclosure, I never watched Game of Thrones. I avoided it like the plague when it was coming out. Even though everybody peer pressured me into trying to watch it, I said, fuck that, I don't want to. But I always liked Daenerys' fine ass and Tyrion Lannister, the Imp, and Jon Snow. I just wanted to watch it whenever I actually felt compelled to, not because everybody else said I had to. I do think I am going to start watching it soon, though. I say all of that to say this. I watched a YouTube compilation of her scenes, and I like her cute banter with Jon Snow. And I see why a lot of people say she elevated the character from the book, even though I have never read or seen any of that shit. Their on screen chemistry became much more as well as they became married in 2011 and or they started dating in 2011 and married in 2018, and now they have 3 kids. After Game of Thrones and appearing in many miniseries and movies I never heard of, she was cast in The Good Fight, a CBS All Access legal drama spin-off of The Good Wife, playing Mia Randell, a young lawyer who just passed the bar exam and whose family is involved in a financial scam destroying her reputation. In 2012 or 2022, she played Louise Bourget in Agatha Christie's novel adaptation Death on the Nile. The original Rose Leslie, however, was born in 1861 and was a professional circus fat woman in the vaudeville era of circus culture. Weighing 615 pounds at 5'3", she is best known for being photographed at Charles Eisenman's Bowery studio in 1881 and got a job soon after performing with John B. Doris' Great Inner Ocean Museum Menagerie and Circus, where she married fellow performer John McLaughlin before sadly dying at the age of 25 after coming down with pneumonia. Sadly, I wish I could tell more on her life and escapades, but there's really only one website that has information on her, and it was only 2 short paragraphs. Goddamn. Number 5, O.J. Simpson. Now, I know what you're thinking. There's no way on earth there are 2 Orenthal James Simpsons. And while I'd like to disprove that and make you look like a fool, I had this name in my list already proved out. I did the research, I did the due diligence, and sadly, there is only one OJ. So, this is a bit of a gotcha. Now, will the real number 5 please stand up? Randy Jackson. Randy Jackson is a name synonymous with music. Only which Randy Jackson is the question? Chronologically speaking, the first Randy Jackson was born in New Orleans in 1955, baby, and grew up there listening to the Beatles, Led Zeppelin, and Jimi Hendrix, and started playing instruments throughout his youth. He formed a three-piece band called Shepherd's Bush with Felix Hanneman and Eldridge Madeir while working a New Orleans nightclub called The Library and playing many gigs down the French Quarter and rest of the city at bars and dances before regrouping and changing their name to Zebra. Their first album, also named Zebra, went gold and was the fastest selling debut album in the history of Atlantic Records. They toured and continued to work with other groups like Aerosmith, ZZ Top, and Journey. They also joined Jefferson Airplane's US tour in 1989. The group made 5 albums in total, and they were inducted into the Louisiana Music Hall of Fame, baby, in 2010, and the Long Island Music Hall of Fame in 2012. The next Randy Jackson is born in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, in 1956, the youngest of 3 children. He started playing the bass guitar at 13, slipping away at night to play local clubs. He graduated from Southern University in 1979 and began working as a studio musician, where he worked for years before joining Journey for their 1986 album Raised on Radio. Now, I feel that both Randy Jacksons must have crossed paths at some point, but after he left Journey, he joined Italian pop star Zucchero to form the Zucchero e Randy Jackson Band for a brief adventure in a solo album, or single album, not a solo. He would continue to work with Keith Richards, Aretha Franklin, Maze featuring Frankie Beverly, Kenny G, and Bruce Springsteen. In 2002, he embarked in his most prominent role, one of the original panel judges for American Idol, remaining there for 12 seasons, departing for good in November 2014 when he said, "That'll be a no for me, dog." He stays away from the limelight now, and in a 2022 interview, he said he eats 5 healthy meals a day, comprised of fish, veggies, some rice and potatoes, fruit, cheese, and protein bars and shakes. The third Randy Jackson is who I thought the second Randy Jackson was until I did the research for this video. Born in 1961 in Gary, Indiana, the second youngest of 10 siblings, at 3 years old, his family formed a music group called the Jackson Five, which he would not join until he was 10 years old, mainly playing the congos, percussion, keyboard, bass and guitar, and dancing as well, but only formally joining in 1975 when Jermaine chose to leave for Motown. And at 16, he co-wrote the Jacksons' most successful single, "Shake Your Body Down to the Ground," with Michael, his brother, Michael Jackson. In 1979, Randy was seriously injured in a car crash and removed from the destroyed car with the jaws of life, but his legs were crushed and doctors told him he may never walk again. But he persevered on, and by 1981, not only was he walking, but he was able to participate fully in the Jacksons' Triumph Tour and worked with his family throughout the rest of the decade. In 1990, the group disbanded and he formed his own band, Randy and the Gypsies, though only releasing 1 album. In 1998, he opened up his record label, Modern Records, boring name, and he also became a partner with Janet Jackson at her independent record label, Rhythm Nation, better name. The 80s, he dated Bernadette Swan, Lynn Swan's ex-wife, and Sugar Ray Leonard's future wife, and she claims he was physically abusive, so she sought refuge at Tina Turner's house, and when Randy showed up unannounced, Turner shot him, but he didn't press charges. Randy has a history of this, as he was also charged for battery in 1991 after beating up his wife, Aliza Shaffi, and their 7-month-old daughter, Stefana. And a heartbreaking result, he only received 2 years probation and to enroll in a domestic violence program, which he didn't even comply. What made it worse is Shaffi called the police to say that the abuse didn't stop, and he served the remainder of his sentence in a mental hospital and never received jail time. Thankfully, whenever the Jackson Five were inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 1997, the same year Parliament was inducted, only the five original members were inducted, leaving out little Randy. Ha ha ha! Fuck you, Randy Jackson. Randy Jackson of the Jackson Five, not the other two. Number 4. Billy Burke. These are the first name twins that transcend gender constraints, starting with Mary William Ethelbert Appleton Burke, born in 1884 in Washington, D.C. She toured the United States and Europe, growing up with her father, William, a singer and clown who worked for the Barnum and Bailey Circus, once billed the greatest show on earth. Guess these guys have never heard of The Wire. She began stage acting in London, and after a few shows, returned to America to star in Broadway musical comedies. She played the lead for many years and met Florence Ziegfeld, a producer who she married and had a daughter, Patricia Ziegfeld Stevenson, who would later write an autobiography about her early childhood. In 1915, she starred in her first movie, Peggy, and after its success, she would continue to be an early silent movie starlet along with some Broadway shows until the 1929 Wall Street crash when they lost all of their investments and moved out west to Hollywood, where she would continue to act in movies. In 1936, MGM made a biopic of her late husband, the great Ziegfeld, but cast Myrna Loy to play her in the movie, which infuriated her since she was already, an actress. But lucky for her, her next role was Glinda the Good Witch from Victor Fleming's The Wizard of Oz. You ever heard of that movie? She continued to act and dance and shit like that until she died of natural causes at 85 in LA. However, Billy Burke would continue to act in many roles throughout the early 2000s and 2010s, but I know what you're thinking. How could a dead corpse that's been in the ground for 30 years act in a movie? Well, maybe it's because it's a different person. Maybe it's William Albert Burke, born in 1966 in Bellingham, Washington. He burst onto the scene with roles in Don't Look Down, Without Limits, Mafia, Komodo, and the titular role of Dill Scallion in the movie Dill Scallion. But he was just getting started, as he would go on to star in television roles in Star Trek Deep Space Nine, Party of Five, Gilmore Girls, and The Closer, where he played Philip Stroh, a serial rapist and murderer, which he would reprise in the series Major Crimes. In 2008, he caught his big break starring in the Twilight roles as Charlie Swan, father of Bella Swan and the police chief in the fictional town of Forks. After this, he starred as Jonah King in the thriller Drive Angry, co-starring Amber Heard, Nicolas Cage, and William Fichtner. If you want to see where he is now, check in with Fire Country, where he plays Vince Leone, a third-generation fire chief in California. But Billy Burke isn't just a fake fire chief for the movies. He's actually an American hero as well. William Francis Burke Jr., born in 1955 in New York, was a fire captain for the fire department of New York who lost his life when his company, Engine 21, responded to American Airlines Flight 11 when it flew into the North Tower of the World Trade Center, if you can believe that. He was in the North Tower when he heard the near South Tower collapse at 9:59, and he told his lieutenant Greg Hansen to help rush his crew and the survivors out while he stayed behind on the 27th floor to assist Ed Beyer, a quadriplegic in a wheelchair, and his friend Abraham Zelmanowicz, who chose to stay with him. All three men died when the tower collapsed at 10:28 a.m., and sadly his remains were never found, and he was the only member of Engine 21 who died in the attacks. There's also a golfer, a hurler, a criminal, and a baseball player named Billy Burke. But I'd be here all day, and, none of them were in 9/11. So, it's a shame that George Bush did that. Number 3, Michael Douglas. Now, this one is very interesting as we've already seen people change their names, especially in the entertainment industry, but this is a very interesting example. Michael Kirk Douglas was born in 1944 in New Brunswick, New Jersey, to Hollywood star Kirk Douglas and Bermudian American actress Diana Love Dill, which is a wild name. Kirk Douglas was born Isur Danielovich in New York to Belarusian Jewish immigrants and went by Izzy Dembski his whole life before changing his name to Kirk Douglas before entering the U.S. Navy during World War II. After studying acting in college, he broke into the scene with many television specials and little known films throughout the 70s. Michael, that is, not Kirk. And his first significant role was in the TV series The Streets of San Francisco, which ran for 4 years. He also received the rights for the book One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest from his father and helped produce the movie, but lost out in the titular role when director Milos Forman went with Jack Nicholson instead. He would produce and star in The China Syndrome, about a nuclear plant meltdown, and the safety cover ups, which released 12 days before the 3 Mile Island accident, the worst accident in U.S. nuclear power plant history, which took place in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. He also produced and starred in Robert Zemeckis' first box office success, 1984's Romancing the Stone, which also starred Danny DeVito, who shared an apartment with Michael in the 60s. The late 80s would continue to be good to him with the movies Fatal Attraction, Black Rain, War of the Rosen, and Oliver Stone's Wall Street, where he played tycoon Gordon Gekko and received an Academy Award Best Actor for his work. The 90s would lead to many other iconic roles like Basic Instinct, The Game, Disclosure, A Perfect Murder, Falling Down, and The Ghost in the Darkness. In 2000, he starred in Steven Soderbergh's film Traffic with Benicio del Toro and his future wife, Catherine Zeta-Jones. Throughout the rest of the 2010s, he starred in many great films like You, Me, and Dupree, Ghost of Girlfriend's Past, Beyond a Reasonable Doubt, Behind the Candelabra, Las Vegas, and he starred as Hank Pym in the Ant-Man movies. In a very interesting court case in 1997, caddy James Parker sued Douglas for $85 million after accusing him of hitting him in the nuts with a golf ball, rupturing one of his testicles, which had to be removed. Now, I knew I had to take a look into this more. Douglas's spokesman says one of Douglas' golf partners, Mark Drack, took the shot, and Parker, who was black, says Douglas stuffed $60 in his pocket and called him the N word after he was rolling in pain. They ended up settling out of court, and I can't find a number, but he deserves at least a few million because nobody deserves to get their testicles ruptured by the Hollywood elite. Michael John Douglas was born in 1951 in Kennedy Township, Pennsylvania, the youngest of 7 kids. He always had a passion for acting, studying speech in college before going to Pittsburgh to work as an actor and comedian, getting the role of the Flying Zucchini Brothers in one of his first roles in Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood before moving to LA. This is when he changed his name from Douglas to Keaton because there was already an actor who we mentioned before, Michael Douglas, and an irrelevant fucking daytime host, Mike Douglas, as well. But when asked why he changed his name to Keaton specifically, he said he searched K in a phone book, saw Keaton, and decided, what the fuck, I'm gonna stop looking, which is an awesome way to decide the name for the rest of your life. He became pigeonholed as a comedic lead in his early films, but got much work in Mr. Mom, Johnny Dangerously, Gung Ho, The Squeeze. Whoa, what a poster! It reminds me of that tragedy. The Dream Team, Touch and Go, and vile, disgusting creature Woody Allen's The Purple Rose of Cairo before being recast and all the scenes shot over when Allen called him too modern. In 1988, he caught his big break with Tim Burton's Beetlejuice as a freelance bioexorcist and Clean and Sober as a real estate agent addicted to coke. He then played Batman in Tim Burton's 1989 movie and Batman in Batman Returns in 1992. He would end the 90s with movies like The Paper, Multiplicity, Jackie Brown, Out of Sight, Jack Frost, Desperate Measures, and Speechless. In the 2000s, he would feature in First Daughter, White Noise, Herbie Fully Loaded, and Cars as the douchebag car of Chick Hicks, the worst Piston Cup winner in history. I've always supported Claude Scruggs, the number 52 leakless adult drip pants car. He's been my YouTube profile picture for like 8 years. He also starred in the Tenacious D short film Time Fixers in the voice of Ken in Toy Story 3 as the other guys, uh, playing a police chief who also worked as a Bed Bath and Beyond manager. Aim for the bushes. In 2014, he also starred in Birdman or The Unexpected Virtue of Ignorance, which is my favorite of all his roles and an absolute gem of movie, along with Spotlight in 2015 and The Founder in 2016. He also plays the supervillain The Vulture and Spider-Man Homecoming, which I thought kind of sucked. He would also star in Dumbo, The Trial of the Chicago 7, Worth, Dopesick, and returning as the Vulture briefly in Morbius. It's Morbin time. Before following it up with a reprisal of Bruce Wayne in The Flash, two back-to-back dog shit movies, along with returning as Beetlejuice in 2024 for Beetlejuice, because everyone's successful movie under the studio's intellectual property rights must be held at gunpoint to shit out a deprived script and $50 million so they can flop in the box office before being on the top of Netflix for a month before falling off into the void of forgotten adaptations and remakes and that we have relegated away from our hearts and minds, even though they were brought into the world by people who didn't care or love them. They just wanted to seek profits and retain the copyright protection. Number two, William Parsons. When I saw how many William Parsons there were in the world, my first thought was, Bazinga! I get to talk about young Sheldon until, man, I actually realized the actor's name is Jim Parsons. So I'll have to save that topic for a different day. So now I have no idea where to start out of the tens of hundreds of William Parsons to choose from. So I'm going to start off with William Parsons, the third Earl of Ross, born in York, England in 1800. He graduated first class honors in mathematics and spent many hours studying astronomy, like young Sheldon, in Parsonstown, a town in Ireland named after him and his family. During the 1840s, he had the Leviathan of Parsonstown built, which was the largest telescope in the world from 1845 until 1917, when the Hooker telescope in California surpassed it. He spent many hours toiling away, improving the techniques of casting, grinding, and polishing large telescopic mirrors from speculum metal, a highly reflective copper tin alloy. Parsons was able to discover the spiral nature of nebulae, which are spiral galaxies, and nickname one of them the Whirlpool Galaxy, the spiral structure of M51. William Parsons, born in 1736 in London, was a British actor and painter. He came up in the era of high comedy and tragedy, acting in roles like Don Felix in Wonder, Charino in Love Makes a Man, and Greg in Beggar's Wedding. He would appear in 200 roles at Drury Lane, a West End performance theater in the horseshit-filled streets of early London. Sir William Parsons, born in either 1945 or 1946, is some English place, was a composer and a musician who started out as a chorister in Westminster Abbey, developing a fine reputation as a tenor, grinding his teeth. He composed a bunch of anthems for royal usage and in his spare time acted as a magistrate for the jurisdiction near his house in Portman Square. William Barclay Parsons, born in 1859 in New York, was an American civil engineer who founded Parsons Brinkerhoff, one of the largest American civil engineering firms. He worked for the York Lake Erie and Western Railroad for 3 years and also wrote turnouts, exact formulae for their determination, and track, a complete maintenance away, which both addressed railroad problems and his interest in rail transportation throughout his life. He was the chief engineer in the Cape Cod Canal and Board of Rapid Transit Railroad Commissioners. William Edward Parsons, born in 1872 in Akron, Ohio, LeBron James, and was an architect and city planner known for his work in the Philippines during the early period of American colonial period, notably designing the Gabaldon school buildings, which as of 2024 there are 2,045 in all of the Philippines. The Philippines. He also recommended architect Daniel Burnham to the Commissioner of the Philippines to help renovate Baguio and the capital Manila, and Parsons prepared preliminary city plans for Cebu City. He is renowned for his use of local materials such as hardwoods and translucent capiz shells for window sash and place of glass to reduce sunlight glare. Am I swerving in that corner? Whoa, whoa. Williams Parsons Alexander, born in 1877 in Barcelona, Catalonia, was an Anglo-Spanish footballer known for being one of the founders of FC Barcelona in 1899, along with his brother, being major pioneers of football in Catalonia, joining Sociedad de Fútbol de Barcelona in 1895, scoring a hat trick in the first ever match played in Bonanova in a 4-1 win. Despite encouraging first steps, due to a loose foundation, the team collapsed and was disbanded. But in 1899, the brothers, along with 10 others, attended a meeting at the Gimnasio Soleil where they formed Football Club Barcelona. John would become vice president of the Blaugrana while still being a footballer, and William was appointed the vice captaincy of the team. However, he never ended up playing a game for the team after leaving in 1900 to Manila for family reasons. I wonder if he ever ran into the other William Parsons out there. William Sterling Parsons was born in 1901 in Chicago and was a naval officer who worked on as an ordnance expert on the Manhattan Project and was the weaponeer on the Enola Gay, the aircraft that dropped the little boy over Hiroshima, destroying three-quarters of the city. The Enola Gay was also the weather reconnaissance aircraft for the primary target of Kokura, but clouds and drifting smoke resulted in Nagasaki being bombed instead. To avoid the possibility of a nuclear explosion, or if the aircraft crashed or it burned on takeoff, he decided to arm the bomb while they were in flight, climbing into the bomb bay and inserting the powder charge and detonator into a nuke. However, he didn't get a role in Christopher Nolan's movie. There are endless more William Parsons, but at the end of the day, who even fucking cares? Number one, George Wallace. For a lot of name twins we've seen, they seem to have the same or similar career paths, oddly enough. But our top spot bucks that trend, starting with the Alabama White Devil himself, George Corley Wallace Jr., born in 1919 in Clio, Alabama, to a farming family, and at 10, he predicted he would one day be a governor. Pratt. He attended the University of Alabama, Roll Tide, and he was accepted for pilot training, but after life threatening spinal meningitis, which made him change to a flight engineer, but received a medical discharge from the Air Force for severe anxiety. He returned to Alabama and served as an assistant attorney general and won his first election as a member of the Alabama House of Representatives before returning to become a circuit judge in Alabama, where he worked for 6 years before running for governor in 1958. He would lose and make some very racist comments following his loss, but Alabama said, "Don't worry about it. In 1962, we'll vote you in with 96% of the vote." In his inaugural speech, he said segregation now, tomorrow, and forever. And the President JFK had to send an infantry of men from Fort Benning, Georgia, to reinforce the integration of the University of Alabama and enrollment of two black students, Vivian Malone and James Hood, personally standing in front of the Foster Auditorium while being confronted by the U.S. Deputy Attorney General Nicholas Katzenbach. His attempts failed as Alabama integrated, but he would continue to espouse racist ideology and lose presidential elections all the same. But one of his most damning indictments started with his wife, Lurleen Wallace, whom he married in 1943 while she was 16 and he was 24. They had 4 children, and before he became governor in 1962, she was the main breadwinner and sole raiser of their children, while he chased political aspirations. In this era, governors could not serve consecutive terms, and he unsuccessfully petitioned this, so he offered Lurleen as a surrogate governor, with him as de facto governor. After she announced her candidacy in 1965, she was diagnosed with uterine cancer after giving birth to their fourth daughter by way of C-section. The doctors told George, and not Lurleen, with George deciding to keep the information from her. She would never receive treatment in time as the cancer spread through her liver and lungs, and she died May 7th, 1968. Her last wish was wanting a closed casket, but of course, George insisted her body be on display with a glass dome above her casket. On May 15th, 1972, he was shot 4 times in a mall parking lot while campaigning to run for president, but sadly, he would survive. But 2 of the bullets did lodge in his spinal column, paralyzing him from the waist down. He met with Vivian Jones and James Hood in the late 90s, almost 30 years after he tried denying them entry into Alabama University, wrote that, and apologized, and he praised them for their strength, grace, and courage as he felt the weight of his guilt and old age as he died in 1998. Rest in peace, dickhead. You almost lived to see Call of Duty lobbies, but nope. Now you're in the dirt. George Henry Wallace was born on July 21st in 1952 in Atlanta, Georgia, as he attended Linwood Park High School in Atlanta, but he moved to Ohio to work at Firestone Tire after his mother died when he was 16, and he would enroll in Akron University, LeBron James, studying transportation, marketing, and advertising. He would move to New York City and pursue his dreams of being a comedian while working in an ad agency on the side. He would perform for the first time in 1977, and he continued to live in New York for many years with Jerry Seinfeld, that fella from B Movie. What's the deal with Anyway, he would move to the West Coast, writing for the Red Fox Show and working with Richard Pryor, Rodney Dangerfield, Roseanne Barr, Jay Leno, and Robin Williams. He was named the best male stand up comedian during the 1995 American Comedy Awards while appearing on WRKS radio with Isaac Hayes and many Tonight Show, Oprah Winfrey Show, and David Letterman Show appearances, and appearing in many great movies like Little Nicky, Batman Forever, Bebe's Kids, Mr. Deeds, the underrated Coen Brothers classic The Lady Killers, Funny People, Think Like a Man 2, and many more. In 2007, he tripped on loose wires on a stage and had a bad injury in the Bellagio Resort in Las Vegas and sued for negligence, winning the case in $1.3 million. Like the other George Wallace, he had political aspirations considering running for mayor of Las Vegas in 2006 with plans to implement a monorail system, close the strip to vehicles, and expand the road systems behind the strip of hotel chains and casinos. A little bit different from the other George Wallace's plan. And with that, the list has been concluded. Comment your favorite name twins, and if I missed some that you thought I should have put on there, then let me know, and maybe I'll make a twin video of this twin video. Ciao.